Hi, I'm Marianne Hayes. On Christmas Eve, my parents swung open the massive doors of our Hillsborough mansion and tossed my single suitcase onto the icy marble steps. My younger sister, Tara, stood right behind them, arms folded, grinning as if she'd just won some cruel lottery. "Let's see how you survive now, big sis," she said, voice dripping with triumph. I dragged the suitcase through the thick, freezing fog, numb and empty-handed. No money, no car, nothing left except the long cashmere coat that clung to me, barely keeping the cold at bay. I collapsed onto a snow-dusted bench inside the gated neighborhood, shivering so violently my teeth chattered uncontrollably. That's when I saw her. An elderly woman, barefoot, her skin purple from the cold, silver hair whipping in the wind, like the frost itself had claimed her. Without thinking, I stood, stripped off my coat, and draped it around her frail shoulders. She clasped my icy hands, looked me directly in the eyes, and whispered, "Kindness like yours is rarer than diamonds." Then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she vanished into the fog. Exactly an hour later, 19 black luxury sedans rolled silently into the street, blocking everything. The same woman emerged from the middle car, her appearance transformed, a floor-length camel coat, hair sleek, diamonds flashing at her wrists. She walked to me, smiled, and said only one sentence, "I've been watching you long enough to know exactly who you really are. If you've ever been discarded by the people who were supposed to love you most, comment been there or share the city you're watching from. I need to know I'm not alone. Trust me, keep watching. What comes next will change everything." Earlier that afternoon, I'd been reeling from a layoff email at 10 a.m. Another round of cuts at the San Francisco ad agency I had devoted 6 years to. I packed my desk plant into my old Honda Civic and pointed it south on 101 toward Hillsborough. 32 miles, 47 minutes if traffic was merciful. It wasn't. I had already called Mom from the parking garage. "Just need a place to crash while I figure things out," I told her. She sounded distracted, muttered something about dinner at 7, and hung up. When I pulled through the gates, the house looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. 15-foot noble. Fur in the 2-story foyer, white orchids everywhere, caterers in black ties setting a dining table for 20. Dad, Richard, was uncorking a 2005 Dom Perignon like it was any ordinary Tuesday. Mom, Margaret, fastened a new South Sea pearl choker that hadn't been there last month. And Tara, my 27-year-old sister, twirled in a backless red silk dress, flashing a 6-carat diamond on her left hand as if she'd been waiting her whole life for this exact moment. Derek, my ex of 4 years, had his arm around her waist. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door and tried to smile. "Hey, everyone. Bad day at work." That was all I got out. Tara spun around, eyes wide with fake concern. "Oh my God, again?" She gasped loudly enough for the caterers to hear. "Third job in 4 years, right?" Then she turned to Mom. "Remember when she got fired from the startup in Soma for not being a team player?" Mom's lips tightened. Dad didn't even glance up from his glass. My face burned. It was a reduction in force. They let go of the entire creative team, not just me. Tara waved her new ring in my direction. Derek gave me that smug half-smile he always had, the one from 2 years ago when he ended things. "It's not you, it's timing." Dad finally set his glass down. "Marianne, we need to talk." He didn't motion for me to sit. He never did when it was bad news. "Last month, I amended the family trust. All of it, $38 million in principal, is now in Tara's name only. Irrevocable. Notarized. Filed with the estate attorney in Palo Alto. You're 32, capable. It's time to stand on your own." Mom added, "We can't keep funding a lifestyle that doesn't produce results, as if my salary ever paid for their orchids or Tara's Birkenstocks." I stood frozen, mouth open, trying to process that my own parents had legally disinherited me while I was still standing in their foyer. Tara pulled out her phone, already recording. "This is gold. Big sis comes home broke on Christmas Eve. Say something for my followers." I looked at Dad. "You're serious?" He met my eyes for the first time all night. Cold. Final. You have 20 minutes to pack what you need. Security will let you back in tomorrow for the rest if you make an appointment. Mom wouldn't even look at me. She busied herself adjusting a gold ornament on the tree. I walked upstairs on autopilot. The bedroom I'd had since I was 10 still had my swim team photos on the wall. I threw jeans, 2 sweaters, my laptop, and toiletries into my old Louis Vuitton weekender. Everything else, books, yearbooks, framed Stanford diploma, would have to wait. When I came back down, Tara was live on Instagram, narrating like some wildlife documentary. And here comes the prodigal daughter with one sad suitcase. Any bets on how long before she's sleeping in that Civic? Dad opened the front door himself. The fog had rolled in thick. Temperature below freezing. I stepped over the threshold. Behind me, Tara called out, sweet as poison. Merry Christmas, Marianne. Don't freeze. The door closed with a soft, expensive click. In under 30 minutes, I went from daughter to trespasser in the only home I'd ever known. I stood on the marble steps in the dark, one suitcase at my feet, wearing the only warm thing I still owned. Everything went silent except my own blood pounding in my ears. I started walking because standing still felt worse. The wheels of the suitcase rattled over the perfect pavement. Every mansion I passed had warm golden windows, laughter spilling out, trees glowing behind gates. Each reminded me I no longer belonged anywhere. Fingers numb, mind spinning. This couldn't be real. Any minute, Mom would open the door, call me back, say it was a cruel joke. But the alarm stayed armed. No footsteps. Nothing. I don't know how long I walked. 20 minutes? An hour? Until I found myself in the small public garden beside the old Episcopal church. One iron bench under a working street lamp. I sat down hard, dropped the suitcase, and let the tears come. I cried for the little girl hiding under the 15-foot tree at Christmas, for every birthday Tara had overshadowed me, for every moment I'd believed that if I just worked harder, they'd see me. Turns out, none of it mattered. I wasn't disposable because I failed. I was disposable because I wasn't Tara. The tears froze on my cheeks. I hugged my knees, staring at the ground, wondering how I would survive the night. Let alone the rest of my life. That was when I heard the scrape of bare feet on concrete. I looked up. There she was, the elderly woman, shuffling toward the bench. Silver hair tangled, thin shoulders hunched against the wind, skin translucent under the lamp. She stopped a few feet away, voice rough from cold. Young lady, do you know if any shelters still have room tonight? I've been walking up from Burlingame. Everything's full. I wiped my face. I'm sorry. I don't have anywhere either. She studied me for a long moment, eyes sharp despite exhaustion. Then she lowered herself onto the bench beside me, leaving a careful distance. Silence settled while her breathing steadied. I noticed her bare, purple feet. Something inside me cracked. Here was someone with even less than I had, and she still asked politely instead of demanding. Without a word, I stood, slipped off my coat, and draped it over her shoulders. She looked startled, then closed her eyes as the warmth hit her. Her thin, veined hands reached up and tightened the fabric. Tears shone in her pale blue eyes. What's your name, child? She asked. Marianne. My voice cracked. She repeated it softly, savoring it. Thank you, Marianne. Then she did something I'll never forget, took both my icy hands, squeezed once, held my gaze long and steady. No words. Just understanding. Then she stood, gave me the smallest smile, and slowly vanished into the night. I sat back down, colder than ever. But for the first time since the door closed, the ache in my chest felt lighter. Giving away the last thing I had somehow gave me something back I didn't know I was missing. The next morning, I woke in a cramped motel room that smelled like stale cigarettes and pine cleaner. I had been staring at the same job listings for hours, applying to anything that paid above minimum wage when my phone rang. An unfamiliar number appeared on the screen. Miss Marianne Hayes, a crisp, professional voice asked, faintly East Coast. This is Grace O'Neill, calling on behalf of Mrs. Eleanor Calloway. She would like to meet you immediately. I laughed, a real laugh, because it sounded like a prank. Who is this really? I asked. Mrs. Calloway will explain everything. A car is waiting outside. Room 112, Grace replied before hanging up. I peeked through the peephole. 19 identical black BMW 760s lined the cracked parking lot like a presidential motorcade. The lead car's rear door opened on its own. I grabbed my keys and walked out in the same jeans and hoodie I'd worn for 2 days. She was waiting in the middle car. Same face as the barefoot woman from the bench, only now she was transformed, flawless camel hair coat, cinched at the waist, red heels catching the sunlight, looking effortlessly ageless. Marianne, she said gently, as if we were old friends, I'm glad you came. The car pulled away, and 20 minutes later we arrived at a hidden 1920s Tudor mansion in Atherton, tucked behind 10-foot hedges and towering redwoods. I had driven past this street 1,000 times without realizing it existed. Inside, the house smelled of cedar and roses. A fire crackled in a massive stone hearth, and floor-to-ceiling windows framed a private lake. She motioned for me to sit on a cream sofa that probably cost more than my car. A butler poured tea we never touched. My full name is Eleanor Calloway, she began. My late husband founded Calloway Commercial Realty. When he passed 12 years ago, I took the company private and turned the profits into the Calloway Family Foundation. We own or finance over 400 million square feet of office and retail space across the country. The foundation distributes roughly $120 million a year. I stared. My brain couldn't process the numbers. Every Christmas Eve for the last 25 years, I do one thing the same, Eleanor continued. I leave the estate dressed as someone who has nothing. No security visible, no wallet, no phone. I walk until I find someone who still has a heart, someone who believes in kindness when no one is watching. Most years, I go home disappointed. This year, I found you. She explained that after my encounter on the bench, her security team, dressed in plain clothes, had monitored me from 2 blocks away for 48 hours. They watched me check into the motel with cash, eat vending machine food, apply to 50 jobs, and cry in the shower without once asking about the barefoot woman or my own struggle. You're the first person in 15 years, she said quietly, who gave away the last thing. Keeping them alive without expecting anything back. I need to know if that was a fluke or who you really are. Eleanor stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind her back. I have no children, no heirs. When I'm gone, strangers on a board will decide where my money goes. I want someone who understands what it feels like to be thrown away on Christmas Eve to decide how we help the next person who gets discarded. She turned to me. I'm offering you a room here, a salary, and a 5-year apprenticeship. If at the end, you are the person I believe you are, the foundation becomes yours to run. Not a gift. A responsibility. I tried to speak. Why me? I managed. Her eyes were suddenly fierce. Because I know exactly what it feels like to sit on a freezing bench with nowhere to go and still choose kindness. I was 29 when my own father had done it to me. I promised myself that if I ever got the chance, I'd make sure no one who chose right in that moment stayed lost. I moved into the East Wing the following Monday. My new bedroom was bigger than my parents' entire downstairs, with French doors opening onto a rose garden I could actually smell from bed. Grace O'Neill, tall, silver-haired, zero nonsense, handed me a leather binder the thickness of a phone book and said, "Welcome to boot camp." The first month was brutal. 6 a.m. runs around the lake with Eleanor's former Navy SEAL trainer. 7:30 breakfast meetings where I learned to read complex tax returns faster than most CPAs. 9 to 6, I sat beside Eleanor in board meetings at the foundation offices on Sand Hill Road, taking notes while billionaires argued over impact metrics. Evenings were spent dissecting 20 years of Grant archives until my eyes burned. Eleanor didn't want another rich kid playing philanthropist. She wanted someone who could turn dollars into real change without wasting a single cent. Her favorite line became, "We don't give fish. We don't even give fishing lessons. We buy the whole river and make sure everyone can eat forever." She enrolled me in Stanford Graduate School of Business's executive program for nonprofit leaders, full tuition covered, no questions asked. 3 nights a week, I drove the 5 miles to campus, sitting in classrooms with executives twice my age, learning to measure outcomes instead of intentions. Weekends meant site visits, battered women's shelters in East Oakland, after-school programs in San Jose, veteran housing projects in the Central Valley. I interviewed mothers who escaped abuse with nothing but their kids and a garbage bag of clothes. I listened to teenagers explain how one safe place to do homework kept them out of gangs. Every story etched itself into me. Back at the estate, Grace drilled me on governance, handling rogue board members, saying no to senators' pet projects without losing federal funds, firing grantees caught embezzling without triggering PR disasters. I rewrote the entire grant application process, shorter forms, faster decisions, mandatory site visits within 30 days of approval. Eleanor read every draft, bled red ink all over them, and made me defend each change in front of the full board. There were nights I fell asleep at the kitchen island with my face on a spreadsheet. Mornings I cried in the shower, feeling like an imposter who would never be good enough. But every time I wanted to quit, I remembered the freezing bench, and I kept going. June arrived hot and sudden. One Thursday morning, I walked into the library expecting another 12-hour strategy session. Instead, Eleanor was alone, sunlight pouring through stained glass windows, holding a single folder. She didn't sit. She slid it across the mahogany table, remaining standing. Inside was an employment agreement on heavy creamstock paper. Title: President and Chief Executive Officer, Callaway Family Foundation. Reporting line directly to the board, meaning her, until she decided otherwise. Base salary $195,000. 3% equity in the foundation's endowment, currently valued just under $4 billion. Full decision-making authority over all programs starting year 3, subject only to fiduciary duty. I stared, speechless. "I didn't bring you here because you gave away a coat," Eleanor said. "Anyone can be generous for 5 minutes when a camera might be watching. I watched you for 5 straight months. I watched you fight for a domestic violence shelter that every banker in the room wanted to defund because the numbers looked messy. I watched you sit on a folding chair in Oakland until midnight listening to a 17-year-old girl explain why she couldn't go home. I watched you rewrite a 70-page policy manual because one paragraph would have left transgender kids without beds. Your mind, your heart, that's what I need. The foundation is yours to run. I'll stay on the board to keep the old man in line, but day to day, the river belongs to you now." I tried to say thank you, but no words came. She waved it off. "Sign it before I change my mind, and finish the endowment tax module first." That night, we opened a 1982 Chateau Margaux on the terrace. Just the two of us, watching the sun drop behind the redwoods. She raised her glass. "To the girl who had every reason to become bitter and chose kindness anyway," she said. I clinked my glass against hers. "And to the woman who refused to let one good deed stay invisible," I added. We drank. For the first time since Christmas Eve, I felt exactly where I was meant to be. By October, I was in my corner office on the 22nd floor of 300 California Street, reviewing final numbers for the second home campus. Grace knocked lightly. "Your sister and Derek Whitaker are downstairs." No appointment. My stomach dropped, memories of Tara borrowing my clothes in high school and returning them ruined flooding back. I told security to send them up. They walked in like performers who had rehearsed their smiles in the elevator. Tara wore a modest navy sheath dress instead of her usual bodycon. Hair in a low ponytail, minimal jewelry. Derek had swapped his hoodie for a navy suit that almost fit. Both carried practiced apologies. Tara spoke first, voice soft, eyes shiny. "Marianne, I've been awful. We've been awful. I'm so sorry for everything, for Christmas Eve, for what I posted, all of it. Derek nodded vigorously. We're getting married next spring. Trying to do things right this time. I stayed behind my desk, hands folded, waiting. Tara took a breath. Dad's in trouble. Some investments went south. He and Mom might lose the house. Derek's AI for elderly care company just needs $2 million to close the seed round. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't life or death. I raised an eyebrow. Which part is life or death? Dad's mortgage or your valuation? Derek forced a chuckle. Look, you're big time now, but blood is blood, right? $2 million is nothing to the foundation. You'll never even miss it. I leaned back. Tell me. What happened to the $38 million trust fund you took last December? Tara's mask blinked. We diversified, crypto, NFTs, a few angel deals Derek's friends were running. Supposed to tenfold. Then FTX collapsed. Luna went to zero. Most of it's gone. Derek jumped in. Market downturn. Happens to everyone. I opened the folder Grace had placed quietly on my desk. Screenshots, bank records, a Forbes article, Hayes family blows inheritance on memecoins. 87% gone in 11 months. I turned the folder so they could see. You bought a Lumbo, each put a deposit on a condo in Miami, and paid influencers to promote crap coins. That's not a downturn. That's arson. Tara went red. You're seriously going to sit there in your fancy office and let Mom and Dad go homeless? I pressed the intercom. Security to 22, please. Derek tried reasoning. Come on, Marianne. $2 million is petty cash here. You'll never miss it. The door opened. 2 guards in suits stepped in. I stood. This foundation exists for people who never had a safety net, not for people who lit theirs on fire. You're not getting a dime. Not today. Not ever. Tara went scarlet. Ungrateful. She pulled out her phone, hitting record as the guards guided her elbows. By the time they reached the lobby, paparazzi vans and a local gossip blogger waited. Someone had tipped them off. Tara performed tears, lip quivering, shouting about a cold-hearted sister abandoning her own blood. The video hit TikTok in 20 minutes. My billionaire sister won't even help our parents keep their house. Family first is toxic sibling. 10 million views in 6 hours. Then the internet did what it does best. Old classmates posted yearbook photos of Tara pouring yogurt on my backpack. Someone found the Instagram live from Christmas Eve, laughing while I carried the suitcase. A former nanny went on record about the way Tara used to lock me out in the rain as a joke. Sympathy flipped to pitchforks. Derek's startup deck leaked, 90% vaporware. Investors ghosted. Tara's wedding planner cancelled. Engagement posts got ratioed. I never posted a single word. By midnight, the video was age-restricted for bullying, and the blogger issued a groveling apology. Tara's followers dropped by half. Grace poured me a finger of scotch that night. Poetic justice tastes better when you don't have to lift a finger, she said. I raised the glass to the dark window. No, I answered. It tastes like closure. November brought cold fog that never fully lifted. News broke on a Tuesday, Pacific Crest Capital collapses in a $4.2 billion Ponzi scheme. Dad had moved every remaining dollar, mortgage refinance, home equity lines, even Mom's jewelry, into the funds 6 months earlier, believing the guaranteed 18% annual return would restore their losses. The FBI raided the Newport Beach offices that same week. The founder was already somewhere off Cabo on a yacht. 30 days later, the foreclosure notice appeared on the Hillsborough mansion's front door. No bidders showed up at the auction. The bank took title. Richard, Margaret, and Tara moved into a 2-bedroom apartment above a nail salon on Story Road in East San Jose. Rent $2,900 a month, the most they could afford. After the bankruptcy filing, Tara's credit cards were maxed out at $247,000, mostly on handbags and retail therapy. Collection agencies called nonstop. They eventually arrived at the foundation without an appointment on a rainy Thursday morning. Security called me. I said, "Let them in." Dad looked 20 years older, hair gone completely white, shoulders curved inward, wearing a sport coat 2 sizes too big. Mom had cut her hair short and dyed it a cheap brown that didn't match her complexion. Tara wore no makeup, eyes puffy, clutching a knockoff tote like a life raft. We met in the small glass conference room on the 22nd floor. Grace stood silently outside the door. Dad spoke first, voice cracking. "Marianne, you're my daughter. I know we hurt you. I know we don't deserve anything, but we have nowhere else to turn. The apartment lease ends in 6 weeks. We're going to be on the street." Mom twisted a tissue into shreds, tears streaming down her face. Tara finally looked up, eyes red. "Please. Just enough to get us a fresh start. We'll sign anything. We'll never ask again." I opened a slim black folder and laid 3 business cards on the polished wood table. First card, Marcus Chen, certified financial planner specializing in post-bankruptcy recovery. Second card, Financial Literacy and Debt Management Program, an 8-week course funded by the foundation, held at the East San Jose Community Center. Third, "We're so sorry." I met her eyes for the first time in almost 2 years. "I believe you're sorry now," I said. "But sorry doesn't rebuild a life. Work does. Courage does. Taking responsibility does." Tara began sobbing, loud and messy. "You're enjoying this. You want us to suffer." I walked to the door and held it open. "No," I said. "I just refuse to pay for your suffering anymore." Security escorted them out. Dad never looked back. Mom whispered one last, "I'm sorry." Tara cried until they reached the lobby. Grace handed me a tissue I hadn't realized I needed. "They'll be okay," she said quietly. "People who hit bottom either stay there or start climbing. You just gave them the only ladder we're allowed to give." I nodded, watching the rain streak down the windows. For the first time in years, the ache in my chest was gone, not replaced by joy, just by space. Room to breathe. The sky over East Palo Alto was the color of steel. The second home rose like a promise, 4 stories of glass and redwood wrapped around a courtyard where kids ran between planter boxes full of rosemary and kale. 3,000 people filled the plaza, families who would live here, donors, city council members, major networks, even the governor for the ribbon cutting. I stood backstage in a simple black suit, heart hammering louder than the marching band warming up. Grace squeezed my hand once. Eleanor, elegant in winter white, gave me the smallest nod from the front row. This was the project I had bled for: 200 permanent supportive apartments, an on-site medical clinic, a job training center, a preschool, a rooftop farm, and a policy that no one would ever be turned away for lack of paperwork. The mayor finished his speech. The crowd roared when my name was called. I walked to the podium. The microphone felt heavier than any trust document I had ever signed. I looked out over the sea of faces. Near the back, almost hidden behind a column, were Richard, Margaret, and Tara. Dad wore an old navy peacoat that hung loose. Mom clutched a paper cup of coffee like it might vanish. Tara's hair was cut short, and she looked small without the armor of designer labels. I let the silence settle for 3 full seconds. 1 year ago tonight, I began. Voice steady, I said, I was thrown out of the only home I'd ever known with 1 suitcase and nowhere to go. I learned that night what it feels like when the people who are supposed to catch you drop you instead. A ripple moved through the crowd. I also learned something else on that freezing park bench. Real family isn't DNA. Real family is the stranger who chooses to see you when you're invisible. Real family is the hand that reaches when you have nothing left to give in return. I turned and gestured to the building behind me. This is second home. 200 families will never again have to sleep in cars because a landlord raised the rent. Kids will never again do homework in the back seat because the lights were shut off. And every single person who walks through these doors will be told the same thing I needed to hear that Christmas Eve. You are not disposable. You are not alone. You are home. Applause started slow, then exploded. People stood, phones raised like a wave of light. I waited for it to crest, then spoke softer, so every microphone strained to catch it. Tonight, we open these doors for every person who has ever been told they don't belong, especially by the people who were supposed to love them most. I looked straight at the 3 figures in the back. Dad's shoulders shook. Mom covered her mouth. Tara stared at the ground. I didn't smile. I didn't scowl. I simply held their gaze for 1 heartbeat longer than comfort allowed. Then I stepped away from the podium. The governor cut the ribbon. The marching band struck up. Children rushed forward with flowers. Reporters shouted questions I pretended not to hear. I walked down the steps, through the crowd that parted like water, toward the main entrance. Richard tried to step forward. Marianne, I kept walking. Not fast, not slow. Just forward. Mom reached out a hand that never touched me. Tara opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time in her life, she said nothing at all. I passed within 2 feet of them without breaking stride. The massive redwood doors of second home opened automatically as I approached. Warm light spilled onto the concrete. I crossed the threshold. The doors closed behind me with a soft, final sound. I never looked back. Not because I hated them, not because I needed to prove anything, but because I finally understood forgiveness doesn't mean reopening the door that hurt you. Sometimes it simply means walking through a new one and letting the old one stay shut. Inside, a little boy in a Spider-Man jacket tugged my sleeve. Are you the lady who built this place? He asked. I knelt, eye to eye. I'm one of them, I said. He offered me a dandelion he'd picked from the courtyard. For you, because you gave us a home. I took the flower. For the first time in a long while, I smiled like I meant it. Outside, the celebration continued. Inside second home, the future began. The air inside second home felt different than anything I had ever breathed. It wasn't just warmth or light, though both were abundant. It was a sense of possibility, of lives being stitched back together, one room, one family, one child at a time. I walked through the corridors, watching residents unpack, sharing stories, laughter spilling into the hallways. Every smile, every hug, felt like a small victory over the despair I had once known firsthand. Grace was beside me, quiet but alert. She had the look of someone who had seen far too much in her time, yet still believed in the good of people. You did this, she said simply. Every decision, every long night, every compromise. You made this real. I shook my head, humbled. I didn't do it alone. You guided me. She allowed a small smile, then motioned for me to follow her to her office. Inside, a leather-bound binder waited on her desk. Welcome to the real work, she said. This is more than philanthropy. It's strategy, accountability, leadership. And now, it's yours to own. My heart pounded as I opened the binder. Pages upon pages of policies, grant applications, impact reports, and financial projections stared back at me. I ran my fingers over the pages, suddenly aware of the magnitude of responsibility that had been placed in my hands. The next few months were a blur. I learned to navigate the complex inner workings of the foundation, negotiating with city officials, reviewing thousands of grant applications, and making decisions that affected thousands of lives. Every night, I fell asleep with my brain still spinning, reviewing spreadsheets and program proposals, only to wake before dawn and begin again. The work was exhausting, but it was meaningful in a way that money or titles never could be. I began to see the ripple effects of our efforts. A mother who had fled abuse finally had a safe place for her children. A teenager no longer wandered the streets but studied in a quiet room with mentors guiding her path. Families who had faced eviction now had homes that offered security and hope. The foundation was no longer a building or a name, it was life itself, changing and growing in real time. Months passed, and the old pain of betrayal and abandonment began to fade. I thought about my parents occasionally, wondering if they had fully grasped the consequences of their actions. Occasionally, news snippets would cross my desk. Tara had left social media after her public humiliation. Derek's ventures had collapsed in a spectacular way. Their apartment above the nail salon was cramped and modest, but at least it was still a roof. None of it brought satisfaction. I didn't feel revenge. I felt clarity. I was free from the weight they had tried to place on me, and for the first time I understood the true power of choice. Then, one quiet morning, a message came from the foundation's receptionist. "Your parents and sister are here to see you." I paused, letting the words settle. Grace gave me a knowing look. "Do what you need," she said. I entered the conference room. Dad looked smaller than I remembered, the lines on his face deeper, his hair gone completely white. Mom's hands trembled as she held a paper cup. Tara's eyes were red, streaked with fresh tears. They looked like people stripped of everything they had relied on to define themselves. Dad spoke first, voice shaking. "Marianne, we know we made mistakes. We hurt you deeply, and for that, we're sorry. We don't deserve your help, but we have nowhere else to turn." Mom nodded, tears spilling over. "We'll do anything to make this right." Tara's voice was softer than I had ever heard it. "Please. Just enough to get a fresh start. We'll never ask again." I pushed 3 cards across the table toward them, the same ones I had given strangers before: financial planning, literacy programs, and access to mental health support. "This is the help we provide to everyone who comes here broke and scared," I said evenly. "No special treatment for family. The same ladder everyone else gets." They hesitated, hands hovering, realizing that the days of entitlement were over. I watched them, silent but resolute, and for the first time in decades, they understood the weight of their choices. I didn't feel triumph or glee. I felt relief. Relief that I no longer carried the burden of their mistakes. Relief that I could focus on the lives I had been given the chance to impact. I left the room, letting them absorb the truth in silence. Grace handed me a tissue. "Sometimes the right path is the hardest one to walk," she said softly. The days turned into weeks. I walked the grounds of Second Home, hearing laughter, seeing children run, watching families embrace the security they had been denied for so long. Every smile reminded me of the little girl I had been, standing on a freezing park bench, believing in the goodness of strangers when my own family had abandoned me. The foundation thrived under our new vision. Programs expanded. Partnerships with local organizations flourished. And slowly, the old wounds faded, not erased, but transformed into something stronger: empathy, purpose, and an unshakable commitment to helping those who had no one else. I thought about my past often, but it no longer defined me. Every moment of rejection, every insult, every betrayal had led me here. I had been given the chance to rewrite not just my story, but the stories of countless others. And in that, I found my power, my peace, and my home. Looking back on that Christmas Eve, I understood it fully now. The pain, the cold, the despair, they had been catalysts. They had stripped everything away to reveal the truth of who I was and what I was capable of. I chose kindness when no one was watching. I chose to help strangers instead of seeking revenge. And that choice had changed everything. Inside second home, children laughed, families embraced, and hope radiated from every corner. I knelt to accept a small dandelion from a little boy, smiling as he whispered, "For you, because you gave us a home." I felt the warmth in my chest spread, a quiet affirmation that sometimes, being thrown away is the first step toward discovering where you truly belong. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just belong somewhere, I had built a place where everyone could belong.